Hi legends, especially my Blood Knights. Today I'm gonna show you a build that literally double, almost triple my DPS. So if you come on my stream, you know that I do this 500 million damage per minute challenge on my free-to-play account. We already did it for Barb, Crusader, Tempest, and Wizard, and now we was the time to do it on the Blood Knight. So on the first try that we did this, we actually managed to reach with an old build of 171 million damage. But you know, me and the chat, we were not happy and we thought that we actually could squeeze a bit more damage, but it felt like the 500 million was like quite out of reach, so we set a new goal that was to reach the 300 million. And after around like 1 hour and me and the chat brainstorming, we actually managed to reach the 300 million, and that literally felt like an accomplishment. I felt like, well, my job here, it's done. But after the stream, I felt like I could push the boundaries even further, and that's what I did. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm literally gonna show you the new build that after testing every single set items, after testing every single like instance and possibility that exist to try to squeeze as much damage, and I'm gonna show you everything in detail, from the skills, the answers, the paragons, everything that he managed to actually go and break the 400 million damage on my Blood Knight, and I felt that was insane. With this, actually, I managed to test it out, everything that it literally could output the maximum DPS on my Blood Knight, and I was extremely happy with it. So we definitely gonna use the Macabre, which is like the summons build that literally it is absolutely the best primary attack single target build that exists. I tried the Umbral, I tried many variations, it literally didn't output not even half of the damage of this build. So if you think that this build not only just performs well in the single target, well, you can also bring these into the dungeons. So if we go here and we show, for example, here this run, you're gonna be able to see that just by changing one offhand, you can actually run these in an extremely efficient and high DPS. You have AoE damage, and you're also gonna have really good single target damage. The only downside is that you're gonna be really dependent on your summons, so you have to go and try to get as much skill cooldown reduction as you can on your summons, and then you literally just buff them up and you try to do as much damage as you can. Overall, this is a very interesting build to play. I kind of love to play with it. Probably it's not going to be new to many of you guys, but probably there are a few things that I changed on the build that might come as a surprise to try to even output the highest damage possible. So without further ado, let's go into the build, because I am really excited to actually share this with you guys. So for the skills, we have here the Swarm of Bats. It's gonna be one of your main sources of damage that you're gonna put a debuff on the target, and then it's gonna explode and create a lot of damage. Then you're gonna use the Shroud of Knight. This one, it is gonna be responsible to actually, you're gonna summon 2 clones and do a tremendous amount of damage. Then we are using the Graffiti Cloud. It's just for defensive, so you can confuse the enemies around you and they start attacking each other. And then we also are using the Sanguinate. Have in mind that like these two, you can also, for example, go with the Transfusion if you want an extra shield. It doesn't really matter because the build is mainly just 2 buttons and a dash, so you can have a bit more mobility. Then we're gonna go here into the instances, and this is the part that I really try my best to find out what is the best combination, and this is literally the best combination that I found out. So the first one is going to be the Ruins Visage, which while you have your clones, the Shroud of Knight, they are out, you're actually going to increase the damage that you do by 90%, but above all, we want this 10% cooldown reduction. Then we are using the Macabre Facade, that the Shroud of Knight now is going to conjure 2 immobilized shadows apparition that they're going to do primary attack. So these clones mainly are treated as summons and also as a primary attack, which is going to be very important for you to actually output the damage that you want to do. Then we are also going to have here the Torture and Torment. Now the Swarm of Bats will cause a small swarm of bats to go from your primary attacks then they like these, they are actually gonna be on your clones and they're gonna add a lot of extra damage. Then you're gonna use here, and these were the slots that I was having the most difficult to find out where is the best pants and where is the best system. But I found out that once I made this combination, it actually did like 30 million more damage than running, for example, with the Mephitic Cloud, with the attack speed, or even the headpiece with the Maw. So this is the best high DPS combination, because now the swarm of bats will also cause you to increase an 80% of critical hit on the target for 2 seconds, but because you're always going to be attacking the target, you get literally 90% crit for free, which can get me up to 100% crit cap. And whenever my Mother's Lament and Royal Consequence goes down, I still have a really high critical hit chance, which I'm always able to crit. Then we also gonna have here the Cruel Vendetta, that the Shadow's edge damage, which is your primary attack damage, is actually gonna be increased by 38%, plus 10% from the Awakened slot. And we also gonna have here the Shad's Oblique, which is gonna increase your critical hit chance up to 22%. So this is gonna be a buff, and this is a debuff on the target. So just based on this, you actually get for free 40% critical hit chance. So very good for you to actually go and keep doing a lot of damage. Then we also gonna have here the Shadow's Edge, that you're gonna mark the enemy, and every time that you're gonna reach to 4 marks, you're actually gonna do an extra damage. And also we are using the Moon Call, that whenever you're gonna attack, you're gonna increase your attack speed up to 30%. If you're gonna run with the dungeons, you can actually change this one from the Moon's Call to the English Chalice, which is gonna pretty much do a ricochet, and like that you actually are able to do more damage inside the dungeons. But if you want to with a single target, you go with the Moon Call. So for the set items, this was like the main challenge that I had here on this account, because obviously, I started out with a 4 pieces Grace and 4 pieces Vitus. That will work perfectly fine, but I wanted to try to squeeze my damage over the 400 million, and the Grace will only take me to 385 million damage. So the way I managed to squeeze that extra 20 million was because I actually am using now 4 pieces Vitus, 2 pieces Ed Winters. And you might think, okay, but where is the chill coming from? The chill is coming from because whenever I do the primary attacks or my summons, they actually gonna apply a chill if you have the gold rune that your primary attacks have an attack and movement speed reduced. This is considered a chill, which is gonna trigger the Ed Winters. Then also, I know that a lot of you guys say, oh, Indez, but you know, they are not applied on the bosses, and they will be true if you were not using the 2 pieces Ed Winters, which your bosses that are immune to chill and freeze effects will now be marked, and they actually gonna start getting the extra damage from loss of control, which is gonna be very beneficial for you to do a tremendous amount of damage. The other one that we are using is gonna be the 2 pieces Shellbass to increase 15% damage on your character primary attack, and also on your summons, because your summons are also being treated as primary attack. So both of these 2 options, one is the min-max one, 4 pieces Grace, 4 pieces Vitus will also work. It's just not the min-max way. Now let's go here into the legendary gems. When it comes to it, you always want to go with the highest damage that you can. Personally, I'm using here the Mother's Lament to increase my critical hit chance. Even though I have a lot on this build, you always want to bring these ones, so you are trying to get like that 100% crit, so you're always critting, and like that you're gonna get the extra benefit from the critical hit damage. Then we are using the Bloodsoaked Jade for the extra movement speed and extra damage. We are also using here the Pain Clasp, that every time that you're gonna have a continuous damage effect, that it will come from the burning of the Rolling Quest and also from the blood flow. And the blood flow actually has a very interesting dynamic that I'm gonna explain to it. Then we're gonna have here the Rolling Consequence, gonna apply burn, crit. Overall, this is absolutely OP gem in the game. The Colossus Engine, this one you probably can actually change it to like with something else. I just still prefer to actually go and use it because it makes me big. It actually gonna give me some movement speed, and I love the utility, but most likely you can actually replace this with any other damage gem and you're gonna be fine. Here on the blood flow, this is actually gonna increase my damage, it's gonna increase my critical hit damage, but because I am already super capped when it comes to the critical hit damage. I'm actually not taking a lot of advantage out of the critical hit damage, but I am taking a lot of advantage out of the bleed that this gem is bringing. Every time that I apply a crit, I'm actually applying a bleed on the target, and like that I am prolonging the status for the pain class to be triggered. Then we are using here the Berserker Eye, still a goated, an S tier, 1-star gem, 16% damage, 2% more crit. It is so good. And of course we are also using here the Fervent's Fang that's gonna increase our damage from 13% at 5 stacks and also 3% extra. Have in mind that all my gems are rank 5, rank 4 on the 5 stars, and I only have one rank 10, so I'm trying my best. Like, gem power is still a pain in the ass to actually go and get it, but I want to really go and deep dive here on something that is so important for you guys to understand. How can you actually squeeze more damage? Because everyone focuses on the gems, but that's not really the secret. So here, Armor Pen, I'm having critical hit damage increased by 55%. Also, the potency is going to help you with it because it's going to extend the durations of your debuffs by 22%. But you always want to go for something like this. You want to go always above at least 20% crit hit chance, because whenever you crit, you actually gonna activate your critical hit damage. So increase 100% by default, plus 48%, plus here the 55% that you get, and like this I will already be at 103, but because I'm also using the blood flow, I'm able to go over the cap. And like this, I'm able to output a tremendous amount of damage just because of that. But also, we are talking about Blood Knight, and Blood Knight is very dependent when it comes to the attack speed. That attack speed will also increase your primary attacks, but also your skills ability. So it also is going to increase the amount of the speed that your summons are going to attack. So we have 21%. The way you actually increase this crit damage and attack speed, it is, for example, here on your head slot, I have attack speed, crit chance, and crit damage. I also have attack speed, crit chance, crit damage. I have here skill damage, a crit chance, and also damage. Then we have here damage loss of control, critical hit chance, critical hit damage. And as you guys can see, I have critical hit chance in all of my pieces because that's the default. However, I'm also using here a very special affixes that it is called the Shroud of the Night, that I actually have the 4 out of 4, but by testing it, I find out that I don't have like the right mid-max gear to actually pull it off. So using the 2 out of 4 was actually more mid-max for me because, you know, this only gives me attack speed. So if I'm actually, for example, gonna use something like this one that is gonna increase 8% of my attack speed whenever I have the clones, the Shroud of the Night active, but it doesn't have crit, doesn't have damage loss of control, doesn't have crit damage. This is actually damage loss if you actually slot this in. So when it comes to these affixes, please make sure that you are making the right call, because sometimes having a 2 out of 4, it is better than having a 4 out of 4, especially when you have a piece that is strong as this. However, with this being said, if I add this piece and on top of it, I will still have the Shroud of the Night. That will be a godly piece for you to have it. So try to make the testing. 4 out of 4 on the Shroud of Night will make the build much better to play, but is not really required for you to output as much damage as long as you have the substats right. Now, another important part, it is going to be the cooldown reduction. The more cooldown reduction you have, the more uptime you're going to have on your clones. So the way you get it, it is, for example, here on your necklace, on your gloves, and also on your rings. So as you guys can see, I have here on my rings, on my necklace, but I'm also using damage done by summons are increased by 4%. This more 4% here. Here I will have the movement speed, but also the damage loss of control, because since we are applying the shield, all these substats are incredibly powerful for you to output a lot of damage. So please make sure that above everything you have your substats in the right spot. So talking about the cooldown reduction, as you guys know, I said that I was trying to focus on having my Shroud of the Night as close as 30% cooldown reduction, so I have the most uptime on my summon. I have 10% here, I'm gonna have another 10% here, then I'm also gonna have another 6%, and like that I'm actually gonna be with the 26 cooldown reduction on the Shroud of Night. If I wanted, I could actually go and I could slot here the oath, so it will give me 4% more cooldown reduction, and like that I could reach the 30% to have the uptime. However, with this being said, since I'm actually using a lot of like buff gems, it's like the Mother's Lament, the Colossus, the Blood Flow, and also the Running Consequence, I realized after testing it that it was like a very minor change, but having the tier was actually more beneficial for me because it will extend the duration of my Blood Flow, it will extend the duration of the bleeds, and like that I could squeeze more damage when it comes to the target. So these are very detailed things that you gotta pay attention whenever you're trying to build up your character. Now let's go here into something more simple. But it was not that simple because I tried so many options whenever it came to the Paragon. I tried the Slinger, I tried like the Overloaded, and the best combination by far I'm talking about 10 million more, 5 million more, something like that, was to have the Death's Release, that whenever my continual damage will actually expire, will start exploding, and then you want to go with all of this proficiency, also the tempo, the up to tempo, vigor, and collateral damage, which is going to be primarily focused on your primary attacks. But this not only is going to boost up your primary attacks on you, but also on your summons, so it was like very good. One thing that I realized, it was like the reason why I didn't go with the Overloaded, and I just started to think, man, this is actually just gonna give me a 60% increased damage on my primary attack, but I'm almost capped when it comes to my primary attack, and you can only have one attack speed at a time, so I'm already getting 30% because of my offhand here, the Moon Call, and like that, having 60% will make me attack a bit faster. But I found out that just having an extra damage source coming from Death's Release, it literally outputted way more damage for me. But if you don't have any continual damage on your build, please go with the Overloaded, which might be a better choice for you. Now let's go here with something very important, that literally this can add like 50 million damage on your build, or even more, depends on how big your account is. So a lot of people, they like to play with the Protector, so do I, because you're actually gonna have the Shepherd's Burden, you're gonna run more and all these things. But if you want to go with the highest damage, you literally have to go with the Attacker Room. This is gonna increase your damage by 3.5%, but also you're gonna have like remnants like this, that this one's gonna increase your damage by 6%. This is gonna give you 10% critical hit damage whenever you are above the critical hit chance. Then you're also gonna have this one that is going to increase your critical hit chance by 3% every time that you are above 70% health. So all these remnants are actually going to be very useful for you to output even more damage. So please go with your Warband and try to farm them, because they actually can make it or break your build. Now let's go here into the familiar, and let me present Tony. Tony is the dragon that I got yesterday. This bad boy here, it cost me 87,000 plat, and the only reason why I bought it first, it is a 198 insight, which is gonna give me almost, you know, cap when it comes to the lingering wounds, so I have 38% now. But the thing about the dragon is, because whenever you attack, he actually gonna apply a burn, and the burn is actually gonna extend the duration of the lingering wounds on the target. But this was not only the reason why I bought this new pet, Tony. The reason is because I got these two active traits, the Maim and the Decimate, and the Maim is going to be a trait that over the years, I will try to stack on my account. So pretty much, you know, it cost me a bit to actually go and pull the trigger, but I literally got a best in slot pet for PvE. The only thing maybe it will be even better was to have Savior, but I'm very happy with Tony. I hope Tony gives me some good DPS in the future, and I literally cannot wait to go to other classes and test it out. Now let's go here into the runes, because as I said, they are very important for this build, especially these gold ones. These gold ones, having this substat will literally add a lot more damage, because you're going to be able to apply the damage of loss of control. So Fa or even the Lev, these two ones can actually make and add a lot of your damage. You also can go with the tier, or also you can go with the oaths, both of these are perfectly fine, but if not, you can even go here with a him, which is going to increase your attack speed on the target. Then you're going to have here more for the dungeons, the seer, which is going to give you a substat that has 90% chance of exploding the target and do a lot of damage. Then you're going to have here the pants, which is like literally doesn't really matter, but this is literally the goated gem when it comes to PvE, which is the zoo that is going to increase like 4% of your critical hit chance. And if you have both of them, you're actually gonna have 8% just based on the runes. I farmed all of them. I farm on the tower, I farm in open world, I farm on the dungeons, and overall all of these legendary runes that I was able to get are literally just from farming. I play this game all the time, so obviously I'm gonna have that advantage, but these are my recommendations when it comes to the build. But overall, just try to focus especially here on the FAB for the main hand, because it is literally the most important. Now let's go here into something that a lot of people don't talk about, but it can actually increase your damage probably like 20 million more, just because I went with the 6 pieces that tested that whenever you gonna attack, it's actually gonna apply an extra damage of 12% on the target, and this is gonna be very key because you're trying to stack all these damage multipliers. And also we are using the 2 pieces of trophy, which both of them are gonna create a void zone, and all of them are also gonna be damage on area of effect, so it's gonna be able to trigger below the boss, and like that you're gonna be able to output a lot of damage. So these are the 2 best. If you want to go with the, for example, the 2 pieces lash instead of the trophy will also work. It's just like smaller DPS output. Then we're gonna go here with the charm. Well, when it comes to the charm, to be honest, I don't even use the charm. Maybe like you can go with something that has like the Shadow's Edge and the Swarm of Bats. Those are like the 2 that you literally should go with. Besides that, you know, the charm is not like something that will make it or break your build. Then we are gonna talk here about the Reforges. This is gonna be super important for you to output as much damage as you can. This is literally the meta PvE Reforges in the game right now, where we're gonna add damage to loss of control because the target's gonna be chill. They're gonna have increased damage to demons. So if I am doing damage to the boss, I will even do more damage because the dummy, it is not a demon. So just based on this, I'll probably have around like 30 to 40% more extra damage to increase on this character whenever I'm gonna go into raids or to the dungeons. Attack speed, of course, duration to beneficial effect duration, and also the critical hit damage. But one important thing, it is whenever you have 3 vengeance, your primary attacks have 2% chance of you deal 100% damage for 1 second. And it's like actually godly because you're gonna start seeing many million, and like that you're actually gonna help you to do a lot of damage. When it comes to the normal gems, basically you want to run the yellow with the potency, the blue with armor pen, and the red with the damage. Try to go with all of them. If not, you can slot in whatever you have, but these are the main priorities for you to output as much damage. On the Helliquary is something that some people sleep on, but try to go with something like this. Willpower and Fortitude only not only is going to help you to increase your secondaries, also is going to be very beneficial for you inside the PvP, but above all, also keep your highest combat rating ones for you to go, for example, into challenge rifts, or sometimes you need that extra combat rating bump for raids, and like that you keep the mid-max one and you keep the highest combat rating one. And so with this, the last thing that we have on the list is gonna be of how can you actually go and do your legacy of Horadrim. So the way I have it right now, I have at 31, I have yellow, red, and then I have the purple. Yellow, red, and purple are literally your main focus at the start of the game, because it's going to increase your armor pen and your armor, and afterwards whenever you reach the 31, because it starts getting like extremely expensive, then you can start working on the potency and resistance. So you have here this like dark purple one, then you have the blue, and then you have this one for resistance. Above all, if you want to min-max your damage, is like the best way that you can do it is to focus on the yellow, red, and purple. And with this, I hope that you guys enjoyed this build, because it took a lot of work and I literally tried everything. So if you guys have any suggestions, recommendations, or after you guys try the build, go for it, because it literally was game changing for me and my experience with the Blood Knight. So guys, please, if you guys enjoyed, don't forget to drop a like, type cheese in the comments, and also go watch this next video because you're also gonna like to see it.